Hello. Good evening, good day. What can I say? All right, so let me share my screen and let's get the party started. So today, second chapter about this round trip on clean code 20 years later. How did clean code evolved these many years that we knew it? What changed? What's new? How should we reason today about clean code? So this is the point that I want to make with you today. We only have 1 hour, so this is the second episode of a series of 4 webinars. And at the end of it, hopefully, there will be a little book written based on the topics we discuss here today. All right. The recording are with Pentalog. Should ask them. Good. Right, let's get the party started. Quick introduction about me in case you don't know me. Okay. So my name is Victor Renta. I'm a Java champion. I've been coding since 2006 and I've trained quite a lot of people in many companies throughout the world. My topics are Spring, Hibernate, Java 8 and functional programming, the usual stack of development, let's say, architecture, clean code, unit testing, and I will share with you today one part of my training that I normally do for companies. Java performance, reactive programming, and secure coding. This is like hardcore stuff, advanced stuff. And I do meetups and conferences in my free time, and that's actually that's partly why we have this going on over here, because I have this beautiful community that I founded several years ago, which is now 3,000 people. So if you care to join, feel free. We're doing stuff every month, stuff like this and other stuff. So for example, test-driven development, coding kata with Kotlin, for example. I try to do monthly some interesting thing, and we are quite a lot of people. I'm curious if you can exceed 3,500 today. So if you want to keep in touch with me, that's the best way to do it. This community that I mentioned. I also have some stuff on Teachable that you can get. I have some open classes for whoever is interested, and I usually go to companies to do in-house training. This is me. If you want to find out more about me, this is my website, but I don't want to waste your precious time. You can Google me if you are curious. Let's jump into code. So for this exercise today, I've prepared the Git with the code you can get right now. I will share with you in case you're curious. This is the Git location and the branch name. In a second, I will get it for you. So if you want to see what goes on in here, if you want to see it for yourself, this is what we are doing right here. Okay, so let's play this game. So we run one day into such a method, filter car models. Just a bit of context. We are searching for the perfect car, and as a matter of fact, we have 2 tests written already, which are surprisingly green, amazing, which will prove that we don't break stuff as we refactor it. Okay, so what's the point? As usual, we can understand what the code is doing from the tests, like reading the tests. So we have here a car, a Ford Focus, which we assume was built between these 2 years. And then this is you searching for a car made between 2014 and 2018. Now, what's the trick in here? I am searching for a car which was produced somewhere in this interval of years. Interesting, right? Now, following this search, I would expect to see my Ford returning. Why? Because I'm searching 2014, and this intersects with the interval I had above for my car. Good. If I search for another interval that doesn't intersect the previous one, then I don't get anything back. This is the behavior of the code. There you go. Now, the code looks like this. I get a list of car models, and these car models, we can imagine they are entities. Please imagine there are entities, all right? Now, these entities are loaded from somewhere, and then I have this criteria that I need to apply on. Now, before you dive further, I want to warn you about one thing. It is not very, think twice if you want to bring the whole dataset into memory and then to filter it in Java or in your application, because it's far more efficient to do the filtering in the database using a where clause, of course. But just for the sake of the argument, let's imagine we have the models loaded already. By the way, folks, feel free to ask whatever question you have, whatever stuff. It's best if you use the chat publicly so that everyone can see the question, but you can use also the Q&A. I will spend the time to answer all your questions, everything, after I finish this session, but please ask them on the moment you get a question. What happens in the method is really interesting. I take the models and I clone it. Creating another list with the same content. And the first question we should ask is, why are we doing this? If you look a bit below, you will see that here we remove from this collection. Now, if we wouldn't have cloned the original collection, then you would probably get a call from your tech lead asking you to come on a code review, and he will probably ask you, what were you thinking? Why are you changing the list that you were given? So as another clean code principle, you should never change, should avoid changing parameters that you get in a method, especially collections. Don't remove stuff from the collection. Parameter, if I make it final in Java, doesn't help. This just means that I can't reassign the variable. But it doesn't mean I can't change the contents, because Java is an old language. We have, by default, mutable collections. The list itself can mutate, as we do here, remove it. Nice try, though. Very interesting thing. Now, so coming back here, if you look then, results that remove if. I'm removing, that's the trick. I'm changing the collection, and I'm removing a model if it does not intervals intersect, parentheses, and then enter. And then you have to move your eyes here, criteria get start here, criteria end here, comma, and the call is not yet done. There is more. Extremely hard to read. All right. We have immutable list in Java. In other modern languages like Kotlin, like I think even Swift, Scala, they all have by default immutable collections. So if you want one in Java, the best chance is immutable list from Guava. Okay, good. Now, remove if. This remove if not, I'm removing something if not. What? I'm removing if not. Wait a second. This is like filtering. If I'm removing those that don't match, it's like leaving those that match. So so the same thing can be rewritten as result equals models. I will filter and I will leave only those, and I will carefully copy paste the logic from here to here. Given the model, arrow, and there you go. And at the end, collect the list. This is how we work 2021. This is how we work with collections this century, this decade at least. We don't change the collections anymore. We create new ones with filtering and using functional pipelines. All the languages today in the world, not sure about C++, have such similar syntax. Good. Which is better. I don't need to remove those that don't. It's far easier to read. I just have to leave those that match. Now, next thing I want to try out is would this call fit a single line? It hurts my eye to move my. If I do that, I will enter the zombie land over here. I will go past a certain descent limit, and that will make people angry when they will have to scroll horizontally the code to see my whole stuff. Good. By the way, a trick: if you have a mouse, if you are old like me and you are still using a mouse, you can hold Shift down, and by scrolling, you can horizontally scroll this. Interesting. Good. Now, this call is too big. And then this makes you wonder, what is going on in here? Intervals intersect. And before you question this formula, I should tell you that I safely copy-pasted it from, of course, Stack Overflow. So don't challenge the formula. The formula is correct. All right. Then what happens? Oh my God, 170 people in the call. Oh my God. I'm curious about your language, by the way. If you can type your language in the chat, that would make a great, interesting. C#, all right, Kotlin, C#, Java, of course, JavaScript, Python, very cool. PHP doesn't have that these functional pipelines, not yet. C# had it long before. Rust, oh my God, my respect. Kotlin, I love it. Good. C++, woohoo, Spartans. Perfect. Now, this function over here that's very interesting. Java is a minority. Haskell, Martin, really, I would like to meet you. Now, this int start int and int start int and this thing over here has 4 arguments. And in a clean code setup, this was long known to be too much. Four arguments are a bit over the limit. Yes, so you should strive to make it to compress the signature, putting less. How? If you think of it, I'm intersecting 2 intervals. Wait a second, but that means I'm intersecting. And then I take 4 integers, but these are bundled together in a sense. They have meaning together. Realizing that the way you could go about is to create a new class. And that's the breakthrough that I would like you to have in such cases. If you have a method with too many arguments, my advice is to try be after polishing the code, because sometimes it happens that, I don't know, you take this big object as a parameter, and then you take the big object name also. And that's stupid. You could just pass the object and take the name from the object itself. So leaving aside such superficial polishing that everyone can easily see, the best thing you could get by facing such a large signature is to discover a new value object. To discover now, in this new object that I'm talking about, some people, I've done it in many companies, many scenarios, many languages. Some people say 2 intervals, and they put everything inside. But if you think twice, that's what? Nah. Other people go like interval intersect params, interval intersect params. That's not really a very good addition to the universe of the problem. You're just copy pasting some stuff into a class. It's not really creating anything useful. This can never be basically reused easily, right? So of course that should result into a class named interval, which has the potential to be reused in multiple circumstances. And let's do this refactoring slowly. Now, I am Java, but since most of you are polyglots in here, I mean many languages, I would try to make the best of Java using Lombok to basically construct this class, which has by default constructor, getters, and the fields are read-only, are final. So if I do that, then I will get a new representation of this thing. Start and end, they represent the interval, and that's a discovery. That's something that I added to the language of my domain, to the universe that I have. But then how do I change from this into this? Now, especially because I see how many languages are in the hubs, let's do it baby steps in a way that will work in whatever language in the world. Almost. Let's see. The first thing we need to do now is to migrate from such a signature into a signature taking taking 2 intervals. Now, up on this moment, we have two behavior patterns. The first pattern is the behavior, I call it Tarzan style refactoring. Let me show you. This is Tarzan style refactoring, brutally changing the code that is used in many places. The next thing you get 73 compilation failures. And you know what typically happens when you have to fix 23, it's good enough. 23 places in the code, you know what happens in that particular second? Your wife comes in, asking you to go buy an onion, asking you to get some bread because we are out of bread. So you don't want to, I mean, imagine the frustration you experience if in the middle of a large fix, you have to break it. It's terrible. So no, you can't do that. No. So what I will do, I won't go Tarzan on this, but instead I will create both functions at the same time. Now, the easiest way to get this through is to delegate to the original function, isn't it? So I just have to return the intervals intersect, the function that I already, the other one, right? This is called overload, not possible in PHP, but it's a bad idea in any language anyway. So I won't tolerate overload like this. It's just temporarily. So let's see, from interval 1, I will take the start, okay? interval 1, I will take the end. Thank you. Interval 2 start, and the interval 2 end. In case you're wondering how the heck am I typing this fast, I should point you to my website. I have a video made with the creators of IntelliJ, PHP Storm, and the JetBrains. Oops, not blog, sorry. On my talk section, there is this wonderful talk made together with those guys, in which they correct me and they help me. Here, it's right here. I show all the tricks that I use when I write code. Now, this is a reasonable step. Nothing breaks still. And the tests, I hope, they still work. The next thing to try is to basically, my goal, my desire is to call this function, not the other one. So how could I refactor towards this? The first thing I will do next, right now, is to inline this call. What does that mean? It means that I will copy paste the code, the code from here into the previous function, but I won't do it with my hands, of course. I will use refactorings inline. Please note the shortcuts in there. Inline, it will keep the method for now because it's still used, but I will replace the call that I have over here with the body of the method. Refactor, bang. This works in PHP Storm, WebStorm, ReSharper, virtually everywhere. Yeah, ReSharper also. Good. Now, intervals intersect. Now I have two functions. The one which is the currently used one, and the one which we desire to have. Now, pay attention, this is called overload, and it's a bad practice. I don't want method to have different sets of arguments, right? However, if the code is very large and you are afraid to go further, it could be a reasonable stop right here. But if you want to be professional, you need to push further, and it would like to remove all the places where the methods taking 4 arguments is used and replace everywhere with this call. How can we do that? To do this trick, we need here to go and say with the currently used one, because you see what happened previously, if you paid attention, I used to call this function from the one above, but then I destroyed the invocation, copy pasting the body everywhere. This is called inline. How are you afterwards? Ask again afterwards. So it's called inline. Inlining means taking this body, putting it everywhere. Knowing that we have such a tool, what we can do here is to call the other one above here. Please think again about this. What are we doing? What are we doing here? I am basically calling the new method from the old method that I want to destroy. If you paid attention, you know what my next step will be. But I have the possibility with my editor to push the body of this function everywhere where it's being used. And this is my next step. This works in all the languages that I know, including PHP, if the method is static. So inline this function will push the body upwards. And that's exactly what I want. Why? Because I want everyone to be calling this function that takes the 2 intervals. Ha! That was unexpected. This is like the weird ways of the old guys. This is how I do this refactoring, because it's very, this works in virtually every language. Again, PHP and JavaScript, mind that you have type hints. In JavaScript is risky, of course, you don't have types, but in PHP also, if you don't have type hints, 7.1 and so on. Intervals intersect is now called from everywhere, bang, with no risk. The test, of course, they still run. And I've just introduced this interval in my language, in my domain. Right? This can be used further. Now, what next? Well, the next thing I will try to ask you is, where should this method be placed? So where should this method be placed? If it takes 2 intervals, it's now in a util. And I have this opinion about utils that is like a necessary evil. It's something like this. Right? When you don't know where to put something, you put it in a util. So I would like to do more design on this topic. So if I'm intersecting 2 intervals, and if now I have an interval class, can't I put this method inside the interval? I could do the same style of refactoring that we did, making the method manually, invoking the method from here, and then inlining the function everywhere. But IntelliJ has another option in this case. It says move method. Also in Eclipse it works. technically speaking, is called converts to instance method, which moves the method inside one of the arguments. It's pretty shocking. How would he know that? So just look what happens. Move this method where? In the interval, it says. And then when you press refactor, everybody, yeah. No, nothing broke. Nothing broke. My wife can come in right now. I'll be happy to go buy some bread. Good. Now, this thing over here, I moved the behavior inside some object that only had getters before, right? So this is like, of course, I want to call my getters over here, right? Folks, if you like what you're seeing, and I think you do, join the community. I'm doing this stuff regularly with my people. So other, good. Then what? Well, it's a pretty stupid name. Interval.intervals intersect. What the heck? No, this just intersects, right? Intersect. Simpler code. Object-oriented code, which reads better, which has meaning, right? Good. Now, next thing. Here we have a lot of stuff. I mean, woo la la. Model, arrow. Woohoo! What is that? If I try to extract the first thing over here, then IntelliJ will be smart enough to figure out that the expression I have right here, this one, if I make it a variable, it can be placed in the block outside of the stream. Pay attention. It figured out that I only needed the criteria, which is a parameter to the function. So technically, this is the criteria interval. Okay, makes sense. But let's think again. Criteria interval equal new interval from criteria. What could I do? Why can't the criteria bring itself this interval? What do I mean by that? I mean, why am I constructing some object based on the state that I extract from another one? Why am I doing that? Let's play this example over here. Here is more powerful, the example. How this is like the model interval. This is the interval of years between this car model was built. So I am constructing an interval based on the state of the existing car model. Now let me be very careful here. We will cross a boundary. If you are if you have little experience, if you are afraid of the code, if you don't have tests behind you, don't do this step. But here, instead of this, couldn't it be great if we had a model.getYear interval? Now that would be amazing. But that comes with an interesting consequence. It means I need to push my interval class that I just constructed, that I just discovered, inside the existing entity model. If you are afraid of doing that, stop here. Ask for someone to help you and maybe try pair programming. It's tricky in a large project that might cause quite a damage. Not bugs necessarily, but a lot of effort. And if you can't really focus much on the problem, it's very hard to get distracted. So let's try to do it now with you. So I would love to have this method in the model, right? Of course, whenever you see red, you know, the poem, I hope. I'm trying to publish a book. I'm kidding. When it's red, yellow, blue, or gray, Alt-Enter will save your day. And those of you not using IntelliJ, here is your equivalent, right? So every time you see a problem, a colored problem in the code, Alt-Enter. Create a method. Of course you create a method. That's the point. I am now where? Where am I? I'm in the car model. I'm in the car model, and I am supposed to return from the car model itself a near interval. I can instantiate the interval over here between start year and end year. That will superficially make this method to return an interval, which would simplify this code a bit, because yeah, now it fits better. It's just a single lambda. Another thing I don't really like at all, in any language in the world, I don't like to have a lambda more than a single line. I love one-liners, right? JSON ignore. Yes, JSON ignore, George, but why are you talking about JSON when I mentioned that this is an entity? Are you serializing entities as JSON? Oh my God. Oh no, that's a risk, so be attentive. It's tricky. I just had a training about domain-driven design this weekend. Now it sounds for me like, my God, don't do that. Criteria interval intersects model get year interval. Now, Okay, that's a good point. The content, the continuation was different. Google it. What is I think there was a poem about that. Anyway, so criteria interval intersect model get your interval. I think I actually remember that. Never mind. So this is the first stage, but the next stage is more dramatic. I will challenge you to go even further than that. Not only superficially return that, but think, can I push the interval class even further in my model? But what do you mean? I mean, I have now two integers in my car model, which I persist and imagine somewhere. Interfaces. What? Why? Don't. Why? No, not here. Interval, get here interval, return new interval, start here, end here. It wouldn't make much sense to. Why am I constructing it? Where instead, oh my God, I could change the entity. Oh la la. Right? But this again freaks people out quite a lot, because I will change. In a typical project, I don't know, 3 years old, this takes 3 hours at least. And yeah, indeed, you shouldn't care. As long as you follow the encapsulation, as long as you respect the encapsulation, you shouldn't care how you store internally your state. And yes, Ralph, you know what comes afterwards. In order to persist this with Hibernate, I will need to switch to embeddable at some point. But let's not anticipate. Let's take it slow. First, let's imagine that we persist. That doesn't raise any problems with persistence. This first. What would I need to do? If I want to drop these two fields, well, then instead of setting the two fields, I can just assign the year interval, of course, equals new interval of start and end. Done. Good. That would allow me to construct, to return directly the pre-built year interval. Very fun. Come on. Year interval. What's wrong? Thank you so long. Thank you. Now, what do we do with the getters? Getters. Well, the easiest way out, and always you want to take it baby steps. Every DDD related workshop, I hope I maybe do. It's highly probable next spring, this spring, website, and join the community. I'm usually trying to announce these webinars every now and then. Or email me. What the hell? I'll put it in the contact with the person that will. This I will just say year interval end. And yes, it's a terrific topic, domain-driven design. Really, really, really cool. This would make the code still compile, right? If I run the tests, that should still work. Okay. So, oh la la, that was quite a big change. Then, what's this? What is? That's a constraint. A constraint on what? On the state of the interval. Now, pay attention to what I'm saying here. It's very deep. Every time you were able, and let me just stop using Lombok for a second, because it will not help me much in the near future. So let's construct the code that used to be generated by Lombok for us. All right, and get. I will leave aside the hash code equals just this. Now, every time you were able, yes, exactly, Zoltan, but you knew it already. You can assert that in the constructor. Oh my God. Virtual friends everywhere. Good. I can construct this in the constructor. I will check that in the constructor. Now, why? Folks, if the interval had getters and setters, then it would be much harder to implement this rule, wouldn't it be? Because this rule, I'll paste the community, because this rule over here that we see, we need to be checked every time you set either start or end. So the moment you have the opportunity to have all the data flowing through a single point like this is a huge opportunity to put a constraint right in here in front of you. Now, why? Again, because I have a single point I have this place through which all the changes that will ever occur, this is the only place where we set the data. So that's why immutable objects always should lead you to think, can I make it valid also, self-validating? And I mentioned in the topic today that we'll be talking about objects that validate their internal state. And this is one example of how this can work, right? Constrained objects that would check themselves. Interesting. Good. So we have this interval over here, right? Inside my entity, fair enough. Where is my entity, car model. Yes, it's here. Now what? There are two possible directions. We've changed indeed inside the state. We removed two fields and we added a single field. So -2 + 1 equals -1 equals happiness. We reduced the size of the entity. But less fields are better. How about these things? These things are actually a code smell. It's called the man in the middle. I will show you all the code smells at the end in a summary. This function doesn't do anything smart, anything useful. It's just delegating the call to an internal data structure, but it doesn't add any value. This is somewhere referred to as indirection without abstraction. Very, very interesting concept. I'm not adding any layer of explanation. I'm just forwarding the call to another object. If that's the case, this method should disappear. But the bad news in the real project is that it's usually used in many places, of course. And how can you remove it without breaking everything? So let me fit it in the same screen. Get end year. Get end year is used everywhere, but we have a tool. We have inline. We know that we can push this body everywhere where the function is called. Okay, ReSharper, Kotlin, Scala, this is C#. I'm not sure 100% about it. Oh yes, it works. It works. PHP doesn't have this. You can't inline non-static function yet in PHP Storm. They will probably support. And if you destroy this function, if you try to inline it, you have a bad surprise. Here, they will actually copy paste the syntax. Doesn't work like that because year interval is private field. But the best thing to do here is the most useful. No, come on, George. No, PHP is great, really. I mean, think Facebook. The best thing you can do in refactoring in real life is Control-Z. I will repeat that. The best thing you can do in a large refactoring is Control-Z and start over. The best thing you can do. Don't ever think that you are throwing away your work. No, you are not. Your work is in your brain, the understanding of the code. You learn something. This is the gain. So Control-Z in large refactorings, you can't. It is impossible to do large refactorings without heavy Control-Z. When I do my clean code training with companies, I ask them for samples of production code, and then I refactor them that live with them, and I always undo large chunks of refactoring several times before I get it right. It's always the case, even me after refactoring insanely much code. So don't ever hesitate to undo. Never. And then after you undo, you realize the problem, that this should be actually a call to your own getter. If now you push the syntax, it should work. Ta-da! Done. Interesting. And that I will repeat the technique here. I will call my own getter, and then I will push out the method itself. Actually, there is a way in PHP. Good. So we've eliminated the man in the middle code smell. I don't have any intermediary useless function. I only have the get year interval. Fair enough. Now there is one single problem left here. Car model takes these two as arguments. Now, who actually calls this? Now, right now in my simple example, I only have the tests that call just a second. So car model, control click, test. There you go. The test is here in the right side, and my exercise is here. As you can see, right here, I get these two as an argument to this function. Now, another insane thing that IntelliJ supports is the following. You can take this thing from here. Folks, I will stay with you afterwards to answer all the questions you have, but I'm trying to meet this hour. Just keep asking in the chat, but if I miss a question, repeat it afterwards. Okay, so don't. Now here, equals new. I would like this piece of code to move in my color, isn't it? I wanted to place it here. Now, this is called in IntelliJ, it's one of the most advanced refactorings it has. It's called introduce parameter. Introduce parameter takes that expression from your method or constructor and pushes it here. It will appear right here when I press enter. But along the way, IntelliJ realized that since it takes the year interval as an argument, it doesn't have to take the start year and end year anymore because they are bundled within the year interval. So if I press enter, the two arguments will disappear. This one will be there. And on the right side, you will see the instantiation of the interval. There you go. You see? Magic. Magic. Good. Now, spreading the word, basically, spreading the concept everywhere. This is the actual hidden benefit. You are spreading the concept everywhere, and you simplify method signatures. You simplify number of fields. You reduce the size. You make you add the semantics to the model, right? I can put behavior inside the new object, and you can put constraints inside the new object. Let me recap this for you. So you see, it will happen that you will find some methods, maybe not util necessarily, but some methods with some many arguments. If that's the case, if you are able to extract to discover a value object, a new type, a new class that will bundle together some of the arguments, that's a huge gain. Why? Because once you do that, you will then be able to simplify code in many other places. What did we do? We reduced the number of parameters that we had. Then we put logic inside. And that is called, my friend, feature envy. When you have some behavior which operates solely on the state of an object, and then you say, why is this logic sitting here when it could be inside the type of my object, right? Kotlin, Scala, you are around. In functional languages, it's quite a habit to use tuples. Tuples have a terrible weakness in that you can't really add new methods to the tuples. They are just bundles of data together, right? So using tuples won't allow you to put logic inside. Okay. Then constructing a type allows you to restrict the state like we did over here. Super powerful because it allows you to disseminate the requirements, basically the constraints. What will feel like the model will not allow itself to go wrong. And again, repeat, every time you have this opportunity to get all the states through a single place, validate that thing on that spot. Okay, good. And then it can, this new object we discovered, this interval, allowed us to simplify the large entities we had. One more thing here. Imagine this car model was actually a Hibernate entity, because that's the reality for most of us, for many of us. Or entity framework, or doctrine, let me speak in all the languages I know. If this is managed by an object relational mapper, then there will be a little fight between Hibernate and your desire to create rich, deep objects. And yes, Rogerio, it is okay to push behavior into entity classes. It is okay to do that because this leads to better organized code. Criteria interval intersects model get interval. It's let's say more expressive, more and you know, basically there are two topics over here about this method. First of all, if you put this in a util like it was previously, some people might miss it, might not find it. In a large project, sometimes it's hard to convey where should we look for behavior relating to intervals. If you put the method inside the object, it's right in front of everyone. Right? So it's highly reusable, if I can say that. Okay, that's the first thing. And secondly, it is believed, and I also agree with that human brain operates better with objects and behavior. It's natural to the way we think. Criteria interval intersects. We assimilate the information a bit faster than intersect over interval. Now, good. Let's see what next. So we have this, we want to make it persistible using an object relational mapper. If that's the case, there are two concerns. First of all, when you cluster these two fields together in an object, I wouldn't like to change the schema, wouldn't I? So that's exactly what embeddable is doing. You will put here, you will declare to your, and this is also in Doctrine, and I bet in Entity Framework also. You will declare here interval to be an embedded class, And this interval over here becomes an embeddable. Those of you that are not using Hibernate, then you will have no issues like this. If you are using Mongo or plain JDBC or database access, it's just your decision how you model an object. Now, this, however, doesn't play nice with Hibernate because Hibernate has allergy to final fields. So you have to remove this, but I won't really add a setter. I will only leave the getters and this. Still, one last thing, I will have to have a constructor which is used by Hibernate only. And this is why I make it protected. For mysterious esoteric reasons, you need to have a constructor for Hibernate to be able to hydrate your state when it loads it from the database. But any developer in the codebase won't be able to call this constructor. It's hidden from developers, only for object relational mapper. And this can be persisted right now in the database. And you know what the magic is? This change that we did didn't change the schema. We still have a table named car model that has an ID, make, model, start, end, 5 columns. Even though you have here a rich, deep model going on. Interesting. So just a short parenthesis because that's very often the challenge. How can we work with these and Hibernate together? Cool. Interesting. Now, organized. So, too many parameters. This is what we started with. If there are, I don't know, 4 or more, that's something you should look into. Now, as I mentioned, many times by just a bit of polishing, you can get rid of some useless parameters or reshape a bit so that you don't need some arguments. Many times, I don't know, 80% if I were to say, 80% I would say that usually just a bit of shaking the API, the signature, and it's done. You reduce the number. But other times, if the signature is the same and you can't do, the best thing you could hope to get is to discover a new concept, a new class. So extracting a parameter object, it's called the refactoring. Data clumps. It's when there are chunks of data that move together. Let me show you another example. Chunks of data that stick together for whatever reason. Here, pay attention, things will get very wild very soon. We have a very similar example, you see? Place order, string F, string L name. FL, okay. String city, street name, street number. I would like to challenge you folks. What would you do to this signature? It has 5 arguments. What would you do to this signature? Give me some ideas. Okay. Of course, we will extract a class. But how would you name this class? And how many would you extract? Think. F name, full name and address. Excellent, Durin. Let's do that. This should fit in a full name. Perfect. Perfect. Georgia, we will talk about everything afterwards. Now, I want to show you an easier way to extract a parameter object. The one that I showed you before is applicable to all the languages in the world, right? The one that I'll show you now is only from strongly typed arguments for strongly typed languages, and I'm not sure about ReSharper, honestly. But it goes like this. You say introduce parameter object. So folks, these guys from IntelliJ, they've created an automatic refactoring to do exactly what we did previously. So here we are, F name, L name. Person is too vague, too wide. Contact is too general. Person, I would rather extract smaller objects than bigger ones. Smaller are more reusable, and I can enforce more constraints on them. And they can be, I would start by extracting small bits first. 2, 3 fields, 4 things together. 5 and more. So this thing is called full name. Now, this dialog over here constructs exactly the class that we created ourselves, doing everything. I mean, oh my God. I mean, done. This is done. Hey, this is your full name. Bang, everything. Now, these names are not very good yet. First name, of course, and of course, I wanted to refactor everything. Please, any parameter, duh. And this is last name. Last name. Now, some of you are laughing now of Java. Yeah, Java is an old language. I know there are data classes, case classes. There are more other alternatives, more elegant in other languages, but this is what we have to live with in Java. The same. And you can notice that this was also used here. And in case the same, let's extract the address too. So this is such a useful refactoring that the guys from JetBrains actually offered it to us out of the box. Refactor. Done. And this takes care to replace these parameters with an instantiation. Bang! You see? Records, yes, records, yes, records. Or, of course, use Kotlin. Anyway, records, yes. Placeholder. That's a good alternative, honestly, David. Records are really interesting here. Not really easy to persist with Hibernate, but and the best thing, in case you see the same combination of parameters in another method somewhere else, you can take these two parameters again, and you can say, okay, let me use the existing class, which is called full name. Done. Whoever called this method now is using the full name. Magic. This doesn't work in Eclipse. Anyway. Ooh la la. Ooh la la. Good. So this is big. This is big. We've identified stuff that should stick together, and we created a class for it. This could be inside method signatures, but can also happen to be like some, for example, some random groupings of data. Let me give you a classic example. Created by string created by, and local date created date, local date created date, and you have the same thing but not for created, for of course modified. Don't even have to have this to deserve it. These two could be bundled together in something like private user action, right? Creation that contains inside the user and date. This is one example. I'll give you much more soon. So every time you see some chunks of fields which move from here to there, you can make it a new type. And also coming back to tuples, because they are really heavily used in some reactive flows or extreme functional programming in Scala or Kotlin. Tuples are bad in the sense that they are not really representing a concept. They are just a grouping of stuff. In case you never saw a tuple is like tuple, and then you say string, long. A grouping of three things, and this is tuple 3, it has 3 types, 3 things inside. I would prefer to create a class which can then accommodate constraints in the constructor and behavior inside. Yes, tuple tends to be very unreadable indeed. I've seen some terrible cases. Good, so this is why it's so super cool to identify new value objects, to discover them. Easier signatures, logic inside, easier for the brain, constraints inside, and you can simplify the larger entities we have over there. Code generator, I'm not a big fan, because then you have to maintain that code. No, I don't like it. Lombok, if you want, but not code generation. I don't like it. I actually wrote a code generation a while ago, but no. Pairs, you know, many languages, in many languages, Java included, it's a lot of noise. It's a lot of noise to create this class, isn't it? But if someone said, use Java 17, let me do that. In Java 17, we finally got in line with the other languages of the world. Finally, Java offered us some features which were available for other languages for many years, like super tiny types. This, if I'm now on Java 17, this full name, a bit of luck. I need to compile it. Let's see if I'm lucky today. Should just a second to compile. It will be converted to a record, which is a one-liner. If you create a type with one single line, not 8 lines, but 1 line, it will be much easier. That's the coolest thing in Java 17. They will stimulate you, they will motivate you basically to create much more types, much more frequent. For some reason, the suggestion is not here. I'm not really I don't really understand why. I inherited from this. Yes, Java 17 should work. Anyway, good. Now, slides. Now, value objects, let me define them for a second, because that's partially the... Value objects are values in the sense that they don't have a life cycle, right? They don't have you can't say that a part of this value object has changed. You are not allowed to change part of it. It's a homogeneous, consistent unit. You can't change part of it. So if, for example, you want to extend the interval that we had, to extend it 1 year later, what was it? here. The way to do it is not to go here and to say public void extend end int delta. It's not that. That's not correct, because that would mean you go end plus equal. And as I said, the value object should not be changed internally, but should be recreated. So you don't change a value object. So the way to implement this is to construct a new interval. So return new interval with the same start, but the end plus delta. This is the way to fix it. Okay, extend end returns you a new value. Huh. Interesting. Good. Another difference between entities and value objects, someone asked, is that value objects don't have a persistent ID. They don't have a primary key, technically speaking, right? Then they are naturally immutable, as I said, as I showed you. And another interesting thing is that in their hash code equals, we include all the attributes of that thing, of that object, right? Now, how do we discover value objects? That's really fascinating. Pay attention. Every time you find some common sense term, like the one we found today, interval, that's trivial, it wasn't big of a deal, but maybe money from a mountain currency. Every time these things naturally stick together, every time you have a measuring, that's a classic example, you measure something and you have a unit of measure, that they should go into a value object. Super Mario, it's called Super Mario. It's called enriched semantic. If you want to express a domain concept, for example, if you don't want to propagate a string through your code because you find it too boring and too, let's say, confusing, just a string. It's not any string, it's an email. What you can do is to construct a microtype which will represent for you the email. This is hardcore stuff, my friends. This is an email object with a single string inside. Some people will say this is over-engineering, and it is in some cases. But it does add more value, more expressiveness to the language, to the domain, right? ID types, another idea, interesting idea. If you ever wrote a service interacting, like you interact with 7 other systems, right, at some point, you will have to manipulate 7 kinds of IDs at least. One ID from here, another one from here, another one from here. And you can very easily get confused between all these IDs. A technique here is to create a microtype surrounding that ID so that you never confuse. And you will only propagate ticket ID inside your application. That will make it type safe. Other languages have type definitions that you can use, but Java has, Java doesn't have anything, but anyway. Enforce invariance. What does that mean? If you have some rules to put in place between some state, for example, full name must have a full name and last name, but the middle name is optional. What you can do is to make this full name, and that would allow you the possibility to put constraints in the constructor, as we did, and leave middle name as optional. Right? Let me try to sketch this in the code, because it's interesting. Something is different in this example. If you have a private final string, it's still immutable, but middle name is optional in the sense that I don't take it to the constructor every time. Now, what would I do? I will create another constructor which is called canonical constructor, and I will say here what we call a wither, with middle name. So the stuff which is optional to provide, I will take in a method that will return a new full name, keeping the first name in place, putting the new middle name and the old last name. And that is like in all the fields which are not really required, right? First, null, last, will be taken through, those required come in the constructor, and the first name is required not null, or if you like, another language, a question mark over here, right? No, it doesn't make sense. This is actually like a builder itself. If you look at it, it's almost a builder. It allows you to give also the middle name afterwards. It's a very good idea because it doesn't force your developers to pass all the data at first, right? 2 question marks. It's okay, yeah. Lombok has withers, exactly. I don't want to make it a Lombok talk, but yes, I had another one which generates the same thing, basically. Identical the same thing, yes, right. If you are in the Lombok game, play that. Okay, if you want to convert this all to Lombok, let's do that also. But since you're a polyglot, it's not super helpful, but yeah. If you want to convert this to Lombok, what you do, you basically delete everything. You put value, private file will become not useful, useless, delete everything, but mind the required null. This does the same thing, you can check it. Identical, the same thing. But since this is very, very weird things, I won't leave it. If you want to explore, feel free. Good. Now, address. Okay, again, constraints, you get the point. Then another reason why I would use a value object is to reduce the number of fields of a large entity. If you have a large entity like, I don't know, customer, 60 fields, take 10 fields, 4 fields, 8 fields out of it and cluster them. Sometimes you know how we orient. We have this screen and we have different divs and sections in that screen. These sections might become value objects. Super deep, super subtle. But the point is that data that you just crud, that you just edit, doesn't deserve to be right next to other fields on which you have really tough constraints. So this is a very good idea, in other words, to extract little objects, embeddables or whatever, from the parts of the state that you have, the boring state. Leave it out. Class explosion. Yeah, you have more classes, but then the core, the one which usually scares people out, if I go to a system and I ask them, what's your biggest entity? They tell me 30 fields. And they are all afraid of that entity. It's very large. So what's the trade-off? You construct 5 more classes, and from 30 fields, you now have 7 fields, maybe 8. I would love that. Anyway, the last 2 usages of Valhalla. Valhalla. Project, if you have some DTO that comes from outside of your system and wants to enter your domain, the core of your logic, don't allow the DTO to enter inside. I keep talking about this for many years. Convert it to another object, another value object, right? Value object that maps what you need from the structures that you got from outside. 178. Rami, I will drink to that. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that's 178. Oh my God. Good. So again, code smells. What are the code smells we saw today? Data classes. Classes that just have also known as the get set mania or data structure mania. Someone actually asks today, should we put logic inside the objects with data? There is actually there was a trend at some point not to do that. But today it was basically these guys proved that this leads to better maintainable code. So go ahead, put logic inside your domain, but pay attention what you put. So in other words, look, this kind of stuff, this kind of logic, right? Place equal player get place plus role. If place more, place decrease, and then player set back. Pay attention what happens. I take the place from the player, I increment, I have another rule, and then I set it back to the player. This is a perfect example to take the code from here and put it inside the player. By also guarding the invariant that the place can never exceed 12, you see? Yeah, of course, use common sense, indeed, but in this case, if you have some interesting business rule surrounding a field, surrounding some data, then this rule needs to go inside the domain. Yeah, don't follow blindly rules, but explore both solutions. Look at how this code looks with rich entities. Look at how it looks with anemic entities, and decide. Anyway, so keep logic next to state, but be very careful with boundaries. I mean, I wouldn't put in the player some logic to format the player as a string or as an XML. Yes. Right. Primitive obsession, we said instead of string and longs, try to use phone number or customer ID. That's a very subtle and, let's say, advanced decision if you take it. I wouldn't take it with any team. It's tricky. And middleman, we also saw it. We saw the first name, and we said, why do we have this method? Just to go into the full name and get the first name? Why? Let's destroy it. And we did that, and we allowed the code to navigate full name, get first name. What else? I think that's it. I think that's it for today. I'm good with time. Now it's time for questions. So let me do like an overview. What did we talk about? Like a summary. Constrained objects. It's good to put constraints on the objects that you have because that would guarantee that you never get them wrong. Plus, it dissipates the logic better in many places, especially when we're talking about business rules surrounding the transitions of a given state. It's very smart to put a transition next to the state because this can stop any developer from messing with that invariant, with that rule. And then I said, if you find some heavy logic working on the state of another object, put it inside the object. Decompose the entities using the value object that you've identified and also mentioned embeddable. And we defined the concept of a value object. It doesn't have a persistent ID, immutable, constraint usually, and hash code equals on all fields. Besides that, we saw a series of refactorings. We saw introduce parameter. We saw introduce parameter object, which created the class. We saw inline method. We saw, what did we see? Method. Move method inside, move method to parameter. All right, I think these were the most valuable of them. Now, let's take the questions. Oh my God. So, wait, I'm scrolling. I will start from the latest questions. I'm not fair, but I will start from the latest questions and I will move upwards. Good. What great practice to the part of the application with the most business value most likely to change? Yes, Victor, I agree that you need to delineate in the center of your application the part that you expect to have. Maybe it already has the most bugs and the most change requests. This I will refer to it as being the core logic. In this regard, I will consider this technically to be my domain logic, which is where I want to keep the code as clean as possible because this is where the pain is. So I want to strip out all the other concerns from it. Yes. So these techniques that we saw over here, introducing value objects, these are most valuable in that core. Yes, they are inspired, but they don't come bundled with the concept of aggregates, eventual consistency, and domain events, which are hardcore concepts in domain-driven. They are, of course, inspired. I think all smart projects today should be inspired by DDD, even if they are not following it by the book. So yes, of course, they are inspired from many places, not from only for that. Value object by itself, yes, it is copy-paste from the domain-driven. Okay, recording, yes, they will be at some point, Pentalog will tell you. So let me start with the easiest question. Mario, okay, I answered that. As a technical lead, I never say anything bad. I let them do whatever they wish for a while, and then let them understand what's good and bad. Yes, but of course, don't let them stray away from more than otherwise day or something. Try to do a workshop, do a little exercise together when you think they are getting a bit weird, right? Good, what else? Law of Demeter. Yes, Law of Demeter was just destroyed 2 years ago. Refactoring 2nd edition, which I call this the Bible of clean code, the New Testament of clean code, out 2 years ago. It's chapter 3, which is the most valuable part of this book. Chapter 3 technically says that, let me search the book by Law of Demeter. This is almost not an anti-pattern, but something I would definitely not mind about. Law of Demeter, if you never heard of it, don't mind. Let's see if we can, come on, search. What are you doing? It's complicated. Refactoring, I will just take the chapter 3 from the book. Maybe perhaps it's faster. Demeter. Not here. The point with Demeter was exactly here. This violates the law of Demeter because it traverses some long path of objects with many dots chained together. This is a violation of a law of Demeter, but I don't care about the law of Demeter anymore, to be honest. Good. Value object, expose them. Okay, expose them. Interesting. Let's see. Yes, I totally agree with this philosophy. I extract the value object, yes, but I don't expose them in my API. I agree. My client, if that's what you said, my clients should not care about my internal rich model. They should see a stable API. Everyone has their own style to refactor. I believe that it would be great that people at least read a bit on the standard from the industry. Yeah, it should be like a mandatory read. This book that I mentioned, Refactoring 2nd edition, and of course, Clean Code book from my Uncle Bob 20 years ago. Now, but this book, read chapter 3, just chapter 3, not the whole book. Read chapter 3. And if you find something that catches your eye, read further at the pages they indicate. So read just chapter 3 as a homework for you. Read chapter 3 from this book. It's called Refactoring 2nd edition. I will paste the link for this for your convenience so that you don't have any excuse not to do it. There you go. It's from a Romanian bookstore, but it's good enough. Good. Let's see. What else? Recording. Yes. Yes. Good. Good. Article. Solid. Okay. Solid. Okay. All right. Okay. Law of Demeter. Someone else mentioned it. Tried so many times and well, we can guess the outcome. Let's see. One person thinks four arguments are too many. Some other think, okay, subjectivism. This is the topic in the chat. There was a debate. What is okay for someone might not be okay for the other guy. True. But how do you fix this? My suggestion would be really to do regular pair programming, weekly if possible, and do every 2 weeks, do a little exercise with the team in Friday morning when no one really focuses much, or Monday morning when everyone is still in weekend. Try to do an exercise about design, try to do some refactoring like we did today, debating on the code. There are many tricks I could tell you about this for sure. Common sense, we have to rely on common sense. Most people have it. But having to explore, yes, splitting the classes smaller ones. Tight coupling. Well, technically speaking, the classes we extract from a large one, yes, they are somewhat related to the parent one. But we found that these little classes, they have the understanding of the code, and they help to disseminate the logic better in multiple places, not putting it all together in a service, as we usually do. Right? Use common sense. Yes, 178. Okay, Valhalla. I hope to get out. It's not really critical for my personal perspective as for design concerns. Longbox withers. Yes, thank you. Getters for middle name. Optional. Very good one. Vyacheslav. Very good one. I was wrong here. In the full name. This middle name over here. In his get middle name should best it returns optional. Those of you not in Java, it really means that the string that I got here, actually some languages don't even allow you not to say this in some cases. So in Java, optional. Yes, that's a very good idea. Could you use builder? Nah, values that are static in nature, immutable. Static in nature? Let's see, Anit, what you meant by this. Static in nature. It's created one time and it ends there. Interesting. It should be passed by value, not referenced. Interesting. This was led to Project Valhalla, I guess. All right. Or more, it should be created. So it's not passed by reference. Yeah. We don't have passed by value in Java. This is the short answer. So the best we have is an immutable object passed by reference. Good. Name of the plugin to display Super Mario. Small object. No, not tuples. Eclipse extend. I don't like generating code and then looking at the code and tweaking manually. I like it to be invisible for me. Tuples are bad. Yes. Kotlin. Have a Java Kotlin project. Yes, I have a client several clients that are doing this right now. Yes, it's amazing. You can combine data classes from other. Yes, it is very possible. It's super cool. Just a general question, when to use Hibernate or such ORMs? Anit, you nailed it. We can debate on this for half an hour. Briefly, any stupid application without heavy business logic, don't hesitate to put ORMs. They are super rapid development. But if you want super high performance, or if you want to have a rich, deep domain model, I mean DDD, purist DDD, then it becomes extremely hard, not impossible, and I will still advise you'll use Hibernate even for complicated or super fast projects, but you need to learn a hell lot of Hibernate. A hell lot of Hibernate. A hell lot of Hibernate. Good. Java has records, but 9 versions later compared to Java 8. Dina, yes, I am sorry. The guys from C# will laugh there. From Scala has it for 7 years. Kotlin for how many? Java finally has records. Yes, indeed. Finally. Okay. Entities are not value objects. Should be not perceived as. No, value objects indeed. That's a very interesting debate about what is a value object and what's an entity. I actually have a slide. I have a slide for anything in the world recently. Here, brief crash course. Entities have persistent primary key. Valid objects don't. Entities are better and they don't implement equals at all. This is what I usually advise teams. Value objects have equals on order fields. Entities are usually immutable, and it's very hard to make it otherwise, whereas value objects are always immutable. Entities, they enforce constraints in their constructor or mutators. Value objects, they enforce constraints through constructor. They are both part of the domain languages. Let's skip this, it's complicated. And basically, any function in a value object should be pure function over there. And this is how we could map them to Hibernate. Wow, 14 questions. Okay, let's faster. Parse address. Okay, entities, values, object. Okay, a function should not do too many things. One function should do one thing. Yes, single responsibility principle. Thank you. Keep it simple. Sometimes a function is doing too many things. That's why we have so many arguments. Very good one. I forgot to mention this. When you find yourself a function with 7 arguments, the first thing you do is take out the chainsaw and ask the million question. How many things is this function doing? That's the first question to ask, not creating a class. That's the first question to ask. So basically, I was wrong. Andre, thanks a lot. You need first to look in the function. Isn't this doing too many things? Very good. Very good. Thank you. Package private access for Hibernate class. Yes, you are right. Technically, you are right. In some circumstances, you can actually make this actually private. Some circumstances. But yes, package protected is better. Thank you. What else? Does it make sense to add the intersect in the car search criteria where you can? Yes. Haha. Interesting. It's interesting to shift this logic from here, but this logic is not heavy enough. If it was a bit more heavy, I could make it like criteria interval. Let's say the criteria not interval, the criteria itself matches years of the car model. That's a good idea. And if there were some heavy logic to hide, that makes perfect sense. I like it. I several times did that. Yes. You know what's tricky here in practice is that this is usually a DTO coming from the wire as a JSON. So putting methods inside objects that come as JSON is a bit tricky. I'm not a big fan of it. Depends. So it's not a man in the middle, basically. Durim, I reached the question you asked. So, where we have a car entity and it has a relationship with other entity, engine, and engine has a model. A car has an engine, and the engine has the model? No, my friend. The car has the model, and the model has an engine. Or, okay. Car repo find by ID, get engine, get model, versus, no, this is man in the middle. I think I answered this. Both cases make DB round trips. Yes, but if you are using Hibernate, it's only one single call that happens. One single select, joining engine and model. But this, if you ask me from a domain-driven design perspective, this is wrong to have links between, so many links through the model. I would rather go into the engine repository nowadays. But if you are asking just between these two, I don't really mind. It's the same, technically speaking. But this is extra. I would delete this useless method. You know what's wrong with those methods? They pile up the same, they pile up into the car, and the car entity is already huge. That's the problem. It's another stupid method in an entity which is already full of stuff. So let's see. How does to do this in PHP? Assert the constructor, community, I paste the link, encapsulation. Yes, embedded DDD related, I hope to do it. I need a very strong group to do domain-driven design really effectively. Right, composition over inheritance. Overloading is a bad practice, yes, because I have to open the method to see the difference between the two variants. I can't really tell sometimes what's different. So overloading I would avoid. It's a bit confusing. How am I drawing on the screen? It's called Zoom It. It's a tool free for Windows, not for anything else, just Windows. Okay, gives a name, recording, YouTube, and now Java closure. Oh my God, Dina. Ah, yes, Dina. Hi, Dina. Okay. All right, Romanian, excellent. Okay, someone speaks Romanian. So let's start again from the last one. Can you say good written open source project? What's wrong with Spring? It's the largest used framework in the whole planet. What the hell? I mean, this is why are you looking for anything else? If you want to break your head, Hibernate. That's much more deep, much more complicated than Spring, in my opinion. But Spring is a good start. So look into Guava. Guava is version 30 today. 30, Guava. Google Commons. Super good library to read. Very, very good stuff, but maybe too good stuff in there. Pass by value. Okay, Java doesn't have pointers. .NET does, yes. Java is passed by value. Technically, yeah, you pass by, I mean, yeah, I was technically both wrong and right. If you have a method, you can't do this in Java. You can't do this, int v. This is passed by reference, and hopefully this ended in C++. Even in C#, this is bad practice. And also in PHP, it is bad practice, because it stimulates you to do side effects on the local variable from here, from the method you're calling. This is a terrible practice. I will reject the pull request if I see this. Never do this. So this is passed by reference. It died a long time ago, in my opinion. Your code is still full of it, but I am dreaming. Okay. Records, yes, I didn't understand one of the last question I'll answer. Java is passed by value. Oh, that's what caused the passed by value. Yes, technically you are passing the value and you copy the value of the variable. So when you pass in Java, clean code books. Clean code books, I think I mentioned the clean code. Let me share with you. Take a screenshot of the following screen. Just a moment to find my slides. Where are my slides? Here, take a screenshot of this. Okay, for rookies, chapter 3, first half, just first half, not the entire book. This is my reading guide. What do you do when some colleagues are complaining that developers should new to match to work? What? Got tough question, Egor. So, what to do when some of colleagues are complaining that developers should new to match to those work with smaller classes? Please rephrase. Complaining that the developer should new to match to work. I mean, when you have too small classes. Maybe that's the question. Now, that could also happen, to have too many super small classes that could make it fuzzy to. The rule is when you have logic, when you have some logic, try to put that logic in its own place. And if you, by this case, you discover some new object, that's a good thing to do. But don't just crack the model as far as you can, as deep, as heavy as you can, without any reason. When to use domain model approach? Ooh la la. That's a link from you guys. Let's see. Yeah, that's actually how it starts. Where are you, my friend? Marty Fowler. Yeah, this is how all books start in domain-driven. Don't use DDD for crude, super high-frequency systems which terrible performance concerns. Embedded systems, there are some clear cases when you should not use domain-driven design. Understanding patterns by Goff and design principles, solid keys that helps to write better code. Yes, and DDD, enormously. DDD gives a great platform to design the code better, thank you, and encouraging you to do more Control Z, equal more learning, more experimentation. because then you have tests that you can trust, and then we are free to imagine stuff. Smaller we can test the code, easier to refactor. Don't really agree here. There's a subtle thing. If you test from too close, it will impede refactoring. If you are using excessively mocks, if you are mocking every single dependency of every single class, that leads to harder to refactor code, much harder. But tricky. It's about unit testing, that part. Code conventions for project, but the rest I totally agree. So you do read about Go patterns. Don't use them in real life, but understand those. And practice TDD yourself. Hard to practice on the job, but that's an extraordinary learning opportunity. And if you are lucky to do it on the job, oh my god. Code convention for projects could decide maximum number, yes, and also Sonar. If you have more than 7 arguments, Sonar will. Okay. Uncle Bob Klinko do the refactoring is one next. All right. So I have a generated DTO. Okay. Oh, perfect. I just discussed this topic today with my group. If I have a generated DTO using OpenAPI, so Rogerio, should I map this DTO to a value object and use this value object in my business? If I use this generated DTO in my test business logic, is it still about? So to the first question, the answer is yes. 90% of time. When exactly? When you have to do logic. When you have to do logic based on maybe complex logic based on the state in that DTO. If you have to or work to do ifs, checks, computation stuff with that things, then you don't want to use the DTO itself because it's risky. It can change, it's flat, it's gets set, it's maybe invalid, a lot of problems. So if I use this generated DTO, you can't really add methods, can you, in a generated DTO? Because it will be overwritten the next day you generate. So I would discourage you from using DTOs in complex logic, definitely. I've seen some terrible examples in my clients, oh my God. Like a function of 50 lines that after introducing a value object, like you said, shrinked to 3 lines. They were doing 3 things, basically, 3 simple things. But the first thing, 50 lines, you can't understand what the hell is going on. All right, solid principles. If I start talking about solid principles, you won't like what I will tell you. So not in public. Good, I think I've ended these. Let's see next questions. I hope, Andre, that we will get the summary, but my hope diminishes every day. If I see so many questions, they can't really capture everything in a book, right? They will write the whole universe. Anyway, don't go into primitive versus object references in Java. And perhaps David, because memory, right? Heavy memory consumption in there. Malloc allocating on the heap, a lot of pain. So, wait a second, here, about overloading, the point is that multiple overloads do the same thing. Yes, you're right. But the frameworks, how to say that, are well documented. They have Java docs, something that you don't, I will not usually write a lot of Java docs in my business logic code, are supposed to be flexible. So they take the burden, they try to be as convenient as they can to you. I wouldn't like to see a domain logic implemented in overloaded functions because that would sometimes, not all the times, but it quickly degenerates. Perhaps I had some too terrible experiences myself. I don't like overloading. Whew. Okay, let's see again. What other questions? There are 2 more things. Oh my God. Related to the talk. Is there any session planned around reactive programming? Oh la la. Folks, join my community, I will announce it. Join my community. When I will do it, I will announce it. It's hard to gather people for a reactive programming session because this is a niche, high technical stuff, but a niche. It's extreme, one of the most difficult trainings I have. It kills your brain. Contract from EFL. Oh my God. Offside, I don't know. I heard about EFL, I never did EFL. I am only 36 years old. I don't know. I know that Uncle Bob talked about the father also, but I don't know what these are. Sorry. I should read probably. Could you please show us the screen with those books again? Yes. I meant that when you request colleague to refactor something in smaller classes, and he complained that it requires much knowledge from other developers instead of bigger single. Touche, Egor. Thanks for rephrasing it. You ask someone to refactor to break a large entity into smaller pieces, but they will tell you that they need much more knowledge. Right? They need much more knowledge from not developer, from business. You will have to call the business and have a chat. Yes, business. Can you explain me what the hell is going on in your domain? This is something that needs to happen if you want to break your model in a useful way. If you just chop it as you find ideas, you won't get anywhere good. No. Durim, don't push me. The quality about solid. The quality of code might be enforced, but the dev ends so the wait. Oh my god, half an hour of questions, and there are still 120 people in the call. Don't you have any job to do? What? So the quality of the code might be enforced, but the dev ends by the dev environment, so that code smells that cannot be pushed. Ooh la la, I like it. How about committing this garbage? Oh my god, Sonar, they are all here. Sonar, if you want to find bugs, if you want check to-dos, analyze code, oh my god, they are all here. They should all be checked. Of course, you should not waste time by talking to a human what Sonar can tell you. Right? Block with pre-commit, yes. But I think you mean more aggressive. Block with pre-commit Git hooks. And then the CI pipeline. So in other words, let me give you the feeling. It's Friday. Imagine, it's Friday. It's 4 o'clock. You want to go out and leave. And you do a push. And you know what happens? Push rejected. Oh my God. You can't push. Oh my God, you can't push. Oh my God, you can't push. And you don't want to go there. It's tricky. Sometimes people have other priorities. They don't want to block someone's weekend. It depends. I would say if you have a drama going on, think about these, yes. But Sonar should be on Jenkins anyway. Mails should be sent. Code quality stuff should also be a tool, yes, managed by. Java modeling. If for FL alternative in Java, you have Java modeling language. I don't know what that is either. Sorry, Dina. You knew. Jira task for learning. How would that be? Many of my high-tech companies, I have clients of all sorts. The high-end companies, the best clients I have, they give people free time to learn. I don't know, 2 hours per week. Some over 1 day every 2 weeks. They have free time to learn. Google also does it. One day every 2 weeks. The last time I interviewed them with them. Because you're doing a great job, we like the way you explain things, very pragmatic. Yes. You mean lazy, not lazy, pragmatic. We have got the requirement to have only DTO with getters and setters, plus services with business logic. Here should be crying smile. Well, Windows dot, you can see crying smile, but you should laugh, right? So, oops, sorry. I just locked my screen. Just a second. 1 second. So, laughing, very important, this one. Very important, critical. Here we go, there. So, that's a requirement. What the hell of a requirement is that? It's a functional requirement, or it's a requirement from a stupid architect from his ivory tower? I beg your pardon, screw this requirement. Unless you have some technical stuff, like they are being regenerated. No, this is not a requirement. Leave, my friend, leave. It's the remote working time. Just leave the company. Or the project. I also want to hear about your opinion about Many Liskov. Liscov I will do. Okay. Blocking commit is bye-bye if using ADO. What the heck is ADO? ADO. What is ADO? ADO. Please explain. In my humble opinion, it's not the desired piece of code. It looks very scary to me. If you really want to do it, I think that there are better alternatives like using a rule engine. Ooh la la. Ah, you are replying to the guy with Dado. Yes. Rule engine I can understand. I use the rules. It's really cool. Yes. Or build a DSL or something like that. Build yourself a DSL so that you can parse a language or write to parser Alexa. No, I never heard of Ado, honestly. Okay. Beat me, Dina. Thanks for your some things here. Solid. Interesting session on great okay, connect. Yes, feedback form, blah blah. Azure DevOps. What's the connection between Azure DevOps and? Okay, so Liskov, are we still interested? 108 people. Oh my god, that's weird. So 1 hour of talk and half an hour of free discussion. Interesting. Liskov, but okay, just Liskov, and then I'll leave. People have work to do. I hope you have a job, right? So let's see, where is my design pattern? I have thousands of slides. I have slides for everything. Dina, but I know you, so yeah. Liskov. Let's see Liskov. Just this one. Don't mind the other ones. Liskov. It starts very funny. Is a square a a rectangle? What? What kind of a question? 9th grade. When did we learn about that? Is square a rectangle? And the answer is, at least this is how I learned it. Yes, it's a square. It's a rectangle with equal edges. So this is what allows you to do this if you translate this in code. If you have square extends rectangle, you can write this code. Right? If you can do more with this, I say that. Yes, indeed. That's the best kind of discussion when you have the questions. Here, however, then something terrible might happen next. This is straight from Wikipedia, my friend. Straight from Wikipedia. You can set the width to 2, okay? And then you set the height to 3. Now the what the hell moment. How can I set 2 or 3 a square? This causes problems because you can't really do anything smart in the square. You can make 3 times 3, perhaps. Perhaps you will override the other one. Perhaps you want to throw an exception from here. I don't know. Whatever you do, if you throw exception, you will break the contract of a rectangle. No decent rectangle throws exceptions when you set a height, right? Why? The caller might not expect that. Okay, so exception is not an option. How about setting 3 per 3? This could be a way out of it, but then I will ask you for the area. What would you tell me? Would you tell me 9? Now, if you didn't know this is a square, the only valid response on this place is 6. But what kind of a square are you to respond me with 6 to this question? This is nonsense. This is contradictory. So what does this mean? It means you can't really have this polymorphism going on. Now, this code also has 2 other problems besides. So basically, square should not extend from rectangle because it cannot comply with the contract of rectangle. So anyone using the square as a rectangle will, at some point, notice that the behavior is different. You can't comply with the contract of your superclass, right? Now, there are 2 other problems here. First is that you extend concrete classes. Don't extend concrete classes. And yes, Andre, very well. The second problem, where is immutability over here? Where do you check constraints? In other words, if you had a constructor and you wouldn't have setters, then you wouldn't have this problem because you would just pass 3 as an argument to the constructor over here and done. Or if it's rectangle, 2 per 3. So there are 2 other issues besides Liskov here. Besides the fact that you shouldn't extend. The other problem is that you're extending a concrete class, which is in practice a very bad idea, unless you are hacking some framework or something. And the third problem is that you were not using immutable objects where you could have. Right? And as Andre pointed out, at this moment, there is the square is not yet valid. Right? The square should have both edges set. Or no, sorry, the rectangle API is wrong because the rectangle should take all the state at once. So it validated correctness. This is another example of why immutable objects and value objects are good. Value objects will not tolerate this. They will force you to take here arguments. There. There's your risk of. Okay. Folks, if I will wait a couple of seconds for other questions, who knows? Perhaps. Thanks, folks, for all the questions, for all the ideas. In case you want to reach me, it's my website. See you next month. See you next month twice. And see you tomorrow if you join my community. Haha, commercials. So if you join my community, we will see you much often than now. Tomorrow I have another talk about software craftsmanship, explaining what the hell is this? Software craftsmanship. What is that? Good. See you. But back to work. Come on. Bye, folks. See you.